The man who first lifted the lid on the CIA's torture program has been released from prison. John Kiriakou worked for 14 years at the agency as an analyst and case officer. In 2007, he became the first CIA official publicly to confirm the agency's use of waterboarding. This is what Kiriakou told us 2 years ago about how he angered Washington.
When I went on ABC News in December 2007, and I said that not only was the CIA torturing prisoners, but that the torture policy was an official U.S. government policy that was approved by the President of the United States himself, the CIA filed what's called a crimes report against me the next day. The Justice Department never stopped investigating me from December of 2007.
And in the very same year that Kiriakou spoke to us, he was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison for passing classified information to journalists. Now he's out of jail but remains under house arrest, and he joins us live from Arlington. John, good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us here on RT International.
My pleasure.
Now, you've described your time in detention, and I quote here, I hope I'm not misquoting, terrible years that ruined you personally, yet you've also said that it's all been worth it. Can you expand on that?
I really do believe that it was worth it. I'm proud to have played a role, however small, in the outlawing of torture in the United States. And to me, the past now is water under the bridge. I'm proud to have played that role, and it's time to move on and continue this fight for human rights and civil liberties.
Well, let's just talk a bit about what you went through, if that's okay. You're currently writing a book about the conditions you encountered in prison. What were those conditions like for you? I
was surprised by the quality of medical care, the terrible quality of medical care, by the terrible quality of the food. American prisoners aren't even fed human-grade food. I remember passing cases of food in the cafeteria marked not for human consumption, feed use only, or for sale only in China. And the medical care was even worse. There were almost 6 deaths of prisoners while I was there in prison, and almost every one of those deaths was preventable.
What was your motivating factor in the first place to put yourself through this? You must have known that there was a high risk that you were taking on.
Well, no whistleblower really sets out to be a whistleblower. I saw a policy that I believed was not just wrong, but was criminal, and I decided to speak about it. I really didn't think long term about how the U.S. government can bring its full weight against a whistleblower. The goal really of the Justice Department is to ruin the whistleblower personally, professionally, and financially. I hadn't thought that through, and that's exactly what happened to me. But again, it's opened up a whole new world for me in the realm of human rights and civil liberties.
You say that the aim then is to ruin the whistleblower. Washington has officially admitted that torture took place. A comprehensive report has been released. Do you consider this a victory?
Oh, absolutely. Everything that I said was true, and we now know that because of the release of the torture report.
It's public knowledge then. Do you think the CIA will abandon its torture practices now that it's out there in the public domain?
I do. I do believe that the CIA will abandon torture, not just because it's illegal, but because the truth always has a way of coming out. And I don't think the organization can withstand another revelation that they had yet again begun a torture regime.
I wondered how you feel, because the truth is out there, but no one as of yet has been held accountable.
That's right.
So, I mean, how do you feel about that?
It's the great irony, isn't it? I personally feel that the Justice Department is hypocritical. To charge me for a crime, not just me, but other whistleblowers as well, Ed Snowden, Chelsea Manning, and others, and then to allow the torturers to go free. But what really bothers me is that there's no prosecution of CIA officers who obviously violated the law. Those CIA officers who were conducting interrogations in which prisoners were killed. I have no idea why there's no outrage and why those officers aren't being prosecuted.
And well, you talk about that and the conditions that detainees are enduring, for example, in Guantanamo Bay at the hands of the CIA, have become, I suppose, somewhat of a recruiting tool for jihadists. Do you think that these practices have actually done more harm than good in this war on terror?
I'm absolutely positive that that has been the case. We always seem to step in a mud puddle, so to speak, where it comes to things like interrogations or drone strikes or attacks on individuals. These activities always serve to promote terrorist recruitments. And, you know, when we first began fighting al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, we were talking about a core of just several hundred people. Well, now look at ISIS, which is sort of the next generation of al-Qaeda. We're talking about fighting something like 35,000 people. And I think that we've had a hand in that recruitment.
How do you think that the US government's attitude to whistleblowers has changed? There's been a number of high-profile cases, including yours, over the last few years.
I think that Americans are more aware of the role of whistleblowers, whereas as recently as 3 or 4 years ago, nobody gave whistleblowers a second thought. I have to say, really, since I went to prison, that I've been overwhelmed by the support I've received from average Americans across the country. And I think that just a few years ago, that wouldn't have been the case.
Now, finally, after all that you've gone through, I have to ask you, would you go through it again? Would you blow the whistle once more?
I would. I would do it again. As terrible as it's been, as difficult as it's been, I have a family that is rock solid in its support of me, and a family that knows right from wrong. Torture is wrong. I'm proud to have played a role in the end of torture as US government policy, and I would do it all again.
John Kiriakou, a former CIA agent, thank you very much for your time and joining us here on RT
Thanks for having
International.
me.